Hi, everybody. Mr. Haneke here. I figured you guys would be pretty upset not hearing my voice for a couple days, so I decided to upload a little lesson in my absence today. You'll note there will be a couple questions at the end of this that you'll be asked to turn in, so please make sure you go all the way through, and this will count for an assignment for today. So, I want to get into a little more about the background of this music and help us understand a little more about the context of this music. So, just going back a couple of weeks, you'll recall we did some basic listening exercises around the idea of what a concert band is, right, compared to an orchestra, the instrument that we use, et cetera, et cetera. And that, of course, led us into a little discussion about Mr. Sousa, the March King, who is really one of the pioneers as far as creating a band as its own form. As you recall, as I've said many times, we are a relatively young type of group compared to singing and string instruments. And Sousa is really one of the main reasons why we as a band exist as a unit. So, new for today, though, I want to actually get into the actual piece that we're learning, "Hands Across the Sea." So it was written by, of course, Sousa, sort of in the peak of his writing time, right around the turn of the century there. And it was very well received. Much like my lessons, as soon as the piece was done the first time, the audience demanded it be repeated 3 times. They loved it so much. And the title just implies, a lot of this Sousa music, as you can probably already figure out, is very patriotic by origin. And this piece in particular, "Hands Across the Sea," written to celebrate America's relationship with its allies, other nations, things like that. So what I'm going to do today, though, is talk a little bit more about the form, the pattern that this piece goes in, because it's a really important form that actually, like 99% of Sousa marches and really all marches actually follow the same form and formula. So we'll talk about what that form is, and then what I'll have you do is go and listen to the piece "Hands Across the Sea" and kind of sort of figure out how the form fits this particular piece. So first of all, what am I talking about with form? Basically, what the sections of the music are and how they go in order. If you think of like a pop music song, typically you have a verse and a chorus and a bridge. Well, we have the same sort of idea behind really almost all classical music, but marches have their own specific formula. And here's what it is. So the sections you see outlined right there, a brief introduction, then the first two melodies are first strain and second strain, both get repeated. Then the next section is called a trio. The reason why it's called a trio is because there are only 3 different musical parts happening there. It kind of sort of shrinks down a little bit in sort of the overall picture of the piece. Then the next section was called the break string, sometimes nicknamed the dogfight. Because it's sort of the darker, stormier, more intense section of the piece. So dogfight. If you don't know this, that's was sort of the terminology used in particularly in World War II when 2 fighter planes would be sort of in battle. So it sort of has that sort of battling sort of vibe to it. And then finally, the final strain or the grandioso, the big conclusion to wrap the piece up, and then the typically the dog fight and grandioso, that whole section will repeat one more time. And the grandioso, the first time you hear it's actually going to be soft usually, and then on the repeat, a big loud conclusion. So again, this is basically the formula for almost every march, particularly Sousa marches. It's really a pretty clear pattern. So looking at your "Hands Across the Sea," and this you'll need to, I didn't write this for you, you'll need to jot this down somewhere. Look at the "Hands Across the Sea" piece. So obviously, introduction starts right away in measure 1. Then the first strain picks up right at measure 5. It's the first main melody, the kind of opening statement. And that, of course, gets repeated. Then the second strain, where the melody changes, you have a new melody, some new parts, kicks in at measure 22. Once again, gets repeated. Now, the trio section, I didn't write this, but it also often indicates a key change, which we do have in this case as well. So the trio kicks in at the key change, of course, measure 39. And you'll notice some of you do drop out here, or at least have kind of, again, like I said, sort of shrunken down parts, a little more reduced, sort of gentler kind of feel there in the trio at measure 39. Then the dogfight, again, that big sort of stormy, intense section kicks in at measure 56. And then that makes way for the grandioso at measure 72. And you'll notice at 72, in your part, it says P-FF. I think most of you have seen that before, but in case not, what that tells you is exactly what you see on your screen, is that the first time you play that section is piano, and then when you repeat it back around, it'll be played at fortissimo. So that's kind of the outline of the piece. So here's what your task is going to be. On Google Classroom, along with the side of this video, I'm going to post a recording of Hands Across the Sea. So your job is to simply build a timeline of when each of these sections take place in the video. Okay, so very obviously, the introduction is going to be right at the beginning. So you'll write down literally, 0, 1 second introduction. Then you'll have to look and listen. When does the first strain kick in? Okay, so I listen. Whenever the first strain happens, I mark down that time and I write it. First strain, blank seconds. Then go down, second strain, etc., all the way through the piece. So you're basically just going to recopy this, if you will, and then next to each point, just tell me what time in the recording I post each of these sections gets introduced. Again, just kind of give you sort of a picture of how this piece in particular, but all Sousa marches are built as far as the form goes. All right, so that is your task for today. So please complete that timeline and turn it into me. And then I will see you guys again on Friday, and we'll be back to instruments then. Have a great rest of your day.